Hi, my name is NERINE DORMAN. Some of you might know me as the organizer of Bloody Parchment, but I am also a Cape Town-based author of fantasy and sci-fi, and editor, and musician, and just all-round general creative. A few years ago, my novella Dragonforged was a finalist for the Sanlam Prize for Youth Literature, and I eventually got round to publishing it, and so I'm going to do a little bit of a reading from here. Just a little bit of context, this is my love song for Tolkien's dwarves, and we are meeting Orna and her friend Dani as they're trudging through the marshes, trying to get to the other side to rescue their menfolk who have gone on a very ill-considered quest. So, without further ado. They trudged along the edge of the marsh, keeping an eye out for when the menfolk had exited, and had perhaps gone on for an hour in the gloaming when Dani cried out that she'd spotted their trail. Hells, a blind man couldn't miss where Orna's Da and his merry band of misfits had churned their way out of the swamp. Considering the relative warmth of the embers and the spent tea leaves tossed nearby, they couldn't have been gone from here for longer than 4 or 5 hours. "We're catching up," Orna said. "Are we going to walk up to them and say, 'Hey, how's it going?'" Dani frowned and prodded at the ashes with the toe of her boot. "I don't know. Should we? Won't they just force us to turn around and go back?" Orna had to agree. She climbed onto a fallen stump and then peered into the distance. A lazy curl of smoke rose from the chimney of a building she'd last explored when it was little more than ruins. "Someone's fixed up that old cottage. Maybe we can find out if they've got anything for us to buy. Maybe hot food. Maybe they'll have news of my Da." Dani straightened and peered off in the direction Orna indicated. The swamp cypresses beneath which the home huddled seemed especially skeletal, yet the warm glow from the cottage's single window was inviting nonetheless. Perhaps they might even arrange to stay the night. They'd have to set up camp soon anyway. Who lived out here on their own? So far as Orna had heard, the folks on the slopes of the Grimberg lived up to the name of their mountain range. Few came here willingly, and those who did often had a reason to stay away from other people. "Maybe they don't want to be bothered," Orna said as a peculiar reluctance crept over her. "Maybe they're lonely," Dani said. "Well, what are we waiting for?" "Wait up!" Orna yelled as she shouldered her pack and hurried after her friend. It was always like this. Dani, for all her love of books, never needed much prompting to head off on an adventure. Dani was the one who'd found the Piskie's stash of tiger's eye. She was also the one who noticed where the wyverns were nesting 2 years ago, and then saved the shepherds a bunch of lambs come spring. If she'd been born a boy, who knew, Dani might even have been the hero their little town had been waiting for all these years. Dani paused long enough for Orna to fall in about 3 paces behind her before she started off again. If there was any consolation in all this for Orna, her Da and the others had come this way too, for their faint boot prints were clear. No doubt they too had sought the inhabitants of the lonesome cottage. As they neared the structure, their route brought them through raised herb beds. Several kinds of lavender grew lush, along with patches of nettle, catmint, sage, dogbush, fennel, rosemary, and numerous others for which Orna did not have names, though Dani was whispering them under her breath, with their full elven names. Peculiar strings of bones and things hung from gnarled branches of the rose bushes and quinces, and Orna shivered. Surely she'd heard of Marae the crone, a human woman who shunned her own kind and preferred the solitude offered by the Southern marches. But she'd been certain the woman resided further north, unless their course had not been as direct as she'd hoped, and the woman herself had moved, which would explain the ruined cottage being fixed. Orna had also heard other unsettling rumors about the human woman that went hand in hand with another word that drove needles of fear into Orna's chest. Witch. Dani stopped, and Orna ran into her with a curse. Dani was peering at an object on the ground, something green patched with brown with moist, warty skin. "Ew," Dani said. "Toads, lots of them." "Well, it's not like you didn't see any in the marshes," Orna replied, but so far as toads went, these ones were far larger than she'd seen before. They sat in a clump next to a rotten log covered in scaly brown mushrooms and gulped wetly at the 2 of them. If Orna had to be absolutely honest with herself, there was something about those toads she found downright unsettling, as if their features were eerily familiar. Danny said and pointed at one of the amphibians. That one looks like Imig, don't you think? What? Orna focused on the toad her friend indicated, and she had to admit that Danny made a good point. Something about the way the toad's eyes slanted almond-shaped like Imig's. Any other toad would have tried to hop away by now, or would be doing a better job at staying hidden, but the half-dozen creatures didn't make any move to escape. One of them, the biggest, hopped towards Orna, making horrible grunting noises, and she couldn't help but let out a small shriek and step back. Then the others followed suit, setting up an awful toady chorus as they hopped about the girls' feet, clutching at their boots with their tiny little grabby hands. Orna continued to step back, her consternation giving way to outright fear. There, that toad looked just like Sven Broadhand, and the other one next to him with the bigger build than the others was Jared Stonehammer, and the small one that sort of squeaked as it hopped resembled Dervin Oligar, the bard. Then she had to sit down hard, because that toad she'd almost kicked in her urgency to put space between her and the horrid little creatures was none other than her Da. If you enjoy that, do consider picking up a copy, and have a frabjous day.